The Letter That Waited 40 Years, a second chapter's podcast story. Hello, dear listeners. I'm your host, and welcome back to Second Chapters, the podcast where we explore the lives we live after we think our stories are already written. You know, I've been doing this show for 3 years now, and I've read hundreds of your stories. Stories of loss, of courage, of starting over when the world told you it was too late. And every single one has moved me. But today I have something different for you. Starting this season, I'm doing something new. I'm going to be reading your letters myself, your actual words, your actual stories, exactly as you send them to me. Because your voices matter, your truths matter. And frankly, some of you write better than any scriptwriter I could hire. If you have a story, and I know you do, please send it to us at secondchapters@podcast.com, because someone out there needs to hear it. Someone needs to know they're not alone. Now, while you're hitting that like button, let me tell you about the letter that arrived in my inbox 3 weeks ago. It came from a woman named Thea. Thea. Not Thea like Thea from book club. This Thea, well, you'll understand soon enough. The subject line read, "The Man Who Came Back." And here's what'll keep you listening. Thea is 67 years old. She's been widowed for 9 years. She lives in a small town in Vermont, runs a modest bed and breakfast, has 3 grown children, 7 grandchildren, a quiet life, a good life, the kind of life you build after the storm has passed. But 2 months ago, a man checked into her bed and breakfast, a man she hadn't seen in 43 years, a man who she thought was dead, a man who had a letter in his pocket, a letter she wrote in 1982, a letter that was never delivered, a letter that contained a secret. The secret that, if revealed, would rewrite not just her history, but the histories of everyone she loves. And here's the part that made my hands shake when I read it. Thea doesn't know what to do, because the man is dying, and he wants to tell the truth before he goes. Her truth, their truth. A truth that's been buried for more than 4 decades. Let me read you Thea's letter, and I warn you, this one is long. Grab your coffee, settle in, because Thea's story deserves every minute we're about to spend with it. Dear Second Chapters, my name is Thea Corrigan. I'm 67 years old, and I'm writing to you because I don't know who else to talk to. My children would be devastated. My friends would judge me. My late husband, well, he's gone. But I still feel his presence in every room of this house, and I can't bear the thought of disappointing even his memory. But you asked for stories about second chances, about love after 60, about the things we thought we'd buried forever. So here I am. Here's mine. 2 months ago, on a Tuesday morning in early March, a man walked into my bed and breakfast. The Maple House, I call it. It's nothing fancy, just a renovated 1890s Victorian in Willowbrook, Vermont. 6 bedrooms, a wraparound porch, and a view of the mountains that makes people cry. I've run it for 11 years, ever since my husband Gerald passed away from a heart attack at 58. Too young, too sudden, too cruel. The man who walked in was tall, thinner than I remembered, with silver hair and eyes that were still that impossible shade of blue-gray, like a winter sky just before snow. His name was Quinlan Thorne, and I thought he was dead. Let me back up. Let me tell you about 1979, because that's where this story really begins. I was 23 years old, fresh out of college with a degree in English literature and absolutely no idea what to do with my life. I'd grown up in Willowbrook, but like every young person in a small town, I was desperate to leave. So I moved to Boston, got a job as a secretary at a publishing house, rented a tiny apartment in Somerville with 2 other girls, thought I was living the dream. That's where I met Quinlan. He was 26, a photographer, one of those artists who seemed to see the world differently than everyone else. He'd come into the office to pitch a photo essay on forgotten New England mill towns. My boss wasn't interested, but I was. God, I was fascinated, not just by his work, but by him. The way he talked about light and shadow, about capturing moments that would otherwise disappear. The way he looked at me, like I was one of those moments. We started seeing each other, nothing official at first. Coffee, long walks along the Charles River, late nights in his cramped studio apartment in Cambridge, where the walls were covered with photographs. Weathered fishermen, abandoned factories, children playing in the street. He saw beauty in everything. He made me see it too. I fell in love with him completely, recklessly. The way you can only love when you're young and you think love is enough. But there was a problem. There was always a problem. Wasn't there? Quinlan was engaged to a woman named Margot. They'd been together since high school, and she was back in his hometown in Maine, planning their wedding. He told me about her the third time we met, told me he was confused, told me he thought he loved her, but he'd never felt about anyone the way he felt about me. I should have walked away. I know that now, but I was 23, and I believed him when he said he was going to break it off with her. I believed him when he said we had something real, something rare, something worth fighting for. We had 6 months together, 6 months of stolen moments, secret meetings, a love that existed only in the margins of real life. And God help me, they were the most alive I've ever felt. Then, in January of 1980, he told me he'd done it. He'd broken up with Margot. He was free. We could be together, really together. We made plans. We were going to move to New York. He'd gotten interest from a gallery there. I'd find work in a magazine. We'd get married, have babies, build a life. I remember the night he told me. We were in his apartment, snow falling outside, and he held my face in his hands and said, "Fia, you're my future. You've always been my future." 2 days later, his mother called the office. Quinlan had been in a car accident in Maine. He'd gone back to get the last of his things from Margot's family home. Black ice on Route 1. His car went off the ravine. They told me he died instantly. I couldn't go to the funeral. I wasn't family. I wasn't even supposed to exist, so I grieved alone. I wrote him a letter, pages and pages of everything I never got to say. I poured my heart onto that paper. And then I mailed it to the only address I had, his mother's house in Maine. I never heard anything back. No acknowledgement, nothing. The letter disappeared just like Quinlan had. 3 months later, I met Gerald. He was kind, stable, nothing like Quinlan. He worked in insurance. He wanted to move back to Vermont, buy a house, raise a family. He was safe. And after Quinlan, I wanted safe. I wanted something that wouldn't break my heart. We got married in 1981, had 3 kids, Michael, Lauren, and Beth. Gerald was a good husband, a good father. He loved me in his steady, reliable way, and I loved him back. Not with the fire I'd felt for Quinlan, but with something deeper, something that grew over years and years of shared life. I hadn't thought about Quinlan, really thought about him in decades. He became a memory, a ghost, a chapter I'd closed and locked away. Until 2 months ago. Until he walked into my bed and breakfast, alive, with gray hair and a cane and a manila envelope in his hand. I didn't recognize him at first. Isn't that terrible? 43 years had changed him, changed both of us. He was checking in under the name Q Thorne, staying for a week, paying in cash. He handed me his ID, and I saw the name, Quinlan James Thorne. My hands went numb. The room tilted. I looked up at him, really looked, and then I saw it. Those eyes. That small scar above his left eyebrow from when he fell off his bike as a kid. The way he tilted his head slightly when he was studying something. "Fia," he said quietly, "it's me." I don't remember what I said. I think I just stood there staring, while my mind tried to reconcile the impossible. The man I'd mourned for 43 years was standing in my foyer, asking for the key to room 3. "You're dead," I finally whispered. "I'm not," he said, "but I'm dying, and I need to talk to you." We talked that night. After the other guests went to bed, after I'd cleaned the kitchen and locked up, I knocked on his door. He was sitting by the window, the manila envelope on the table beside him. He told me everything. The car accident had happened, but he hadn't died. He'd been badly injured, broken ribs, collapsed lung, severe concussion. He'd been in a coma for 2 weeks. When he woke up, Margot was there. Her family was there. They'd taken care of everything while he was unconscious. And when he woke up confused, disoriented, asking for me, Margot told him something that changed everything. She told him I was pregnant. She told him I'd called his mother's house while he was in the coma, hysterical, demanding to speak to him. She said I'd told his mother that I was expecting his baby, that I needed him to come back to Boston immediately or I was going to take care of it. She told him I'd given his mother an ultimatum: send money, $5,000, or I'd go to the press about our affair and ruin his photography career before it even started. None of it was true, not one single word. But Quinlan, drugged and confused and barely conscious, believed it. He believed I'd been using him. He believed I was trying to trap him or extort him, and he was devastated. His mother convinced him that the kindest thing, the right thing, was to let me think he died, to make a clean break, to marry Margot, the woman who'd stood by him, the woman who'd never betray him, and forget about the manipulative girl in Boston who'd tried to destroy him. So that's what he did. He married Margot 3 months later. They moved to Oregon. He became a high school art teacher. They had 2 children. He never contacted me. He never tried to find out the truth. He built a life with Margot, and somewhere along the way, he convinced himself that he'd made the right choice, that I'd been a mistake. A beautiful, painful mistake. Until 6 months ago, his mother died, pancreatic cancer, 84 years old, in her final days, medicated and facing her own mortality. She asked to speak to Quinlan alone, and she confessed everything. She told him Margot had lied, that I'd never called, never asked for money, never been pregnant, that Margot had fabricated the entire story because she was desperate not to lose him, and that she, his mother, had gone along with it because she thought Margot was the safer choice, the better choice, the choice that wouldn't disrupt their family or embarrass them in their small town. She told him the only thing I'd ever sent was a letter, a love letter that arrived 3 weeks after the accident, a letter his mother had burned without reading because she thought it was best for everyone. She told him she was sorry, that she'd been wrong, that she'd stolen his choice, and then she died. Quinlan sat with that information for 2 days. Then he confronted Margot. At first, she denied it. Then she broke down, admitted everything, said she'd been 23 and terrified of losing him, said she'd loved him too much to let me have him, said she'd spent 43 years trying to be enough for him, trying to make him forget me, trying to build a marriage strong enough to erase what we'd had. She asked for forgiveness. She said she'd been young and foolish and desperate. She said their life together had been real, their children were real, their love, however it started, had become real. Quinlan told her he couldn't forgive her. Not then, maybe not ever. He filed for divorce, and then, 2 weeks later, his doctor gave him the diagnosis: stage 4 pancreatic cancer, the same thing that had killed his mother. Inoperable, aggressive, 6 months, maybe less. So he came here, to Vermont, to find me, to tell me the truth, to give me the envelope he'd been carrying for 43 years. Inside that envelope was a letter, not the one I'd written to him. That was long gone, turned to ash by his mother's hands. This was a letter he'd written to me in 1982, 2 years after the accident. He told me he'd written it during a moment of weakness, a moment when he'd been sitting in his living room in Portland, Oregon, with Margot pregnant with their first child, and he'd suddenly been overwhelmed with doubt. What if his mother had been wrong about me? What if Margot had exaggerated? What if I'd really loved him? So he wrote it all down, everything he remembered about our time together, every conversation, every touch, every moment of joy, everything he'd felt, everything he wished he'd said before it all fell apart. He'd addressed it to my old apartment in Somerville, but he never sent it. He told himself it was because he was married now, because it wouldn't be fair to Margot, because what good would it do? But the truth was, he was afraid. Afraid that if he sent it and I responded, he'd have to face the possibility that he'd made the wrong choice, that he'd thrown away something precious for a lie. So he kept it, folded in an envelope, hidden in a box in the back of his closet. He moved it from house to house, state to state, decade to decade, a ghost of the life he didn't choose. I read that letter sitting in my kitchen at 3 in the morning. I read it 3 times, crying so hard I could barely breathe. Because in those pages, I saw the man I'd loved, the man I'd grieved, the man I'd forced myself to forget. He'd loved me, really, truly loved me, the way I'd loved him. And we'd lost it all, because 2 women had decided they knew better, because his mother wanted to protect him, because Margot couldn't let him go. And here's what haunts me. If they just told the truth, what would our lives have been? Would we have made it? Would we have moved to New York, struggled as artists, fought and loved and built something real? Or would we have crashed and burned, the way so many young loves do? I'll never know. None of us will. That was 2 months ago. Quinlan is still here. He's in room 3, the one with the window seat that overlooks the garden. He's too sick to travel now. The hospice nurse comes twice a day. He's on morphine for the pain. He has days, maybe a week. His children came to visit once, a daughter and a son, both in their 40s. They were polite to me, but clearly confused about why their father had chosen to die in a stranger's bed and breakfast in Vermont. They don't know about me, about us, about what their father lost before they were even born. My children don't know either. That's the problem. Michael, my oldest, is 52. He lives in Boston with his wife and 2 teenage daughters. He's successful, stable, everything Gerald hoped he'd be. He calls me every Sunday. Lauren is 49. She's a lawyer in New York, never married, fiercely independent. She looks like Gerald, but has my temperament. She visits once a month. Beth is 45. She's the one I worry about most. She's going through a devastating divorce right now. Her husband of 20 years left her for a woman he met at the gym. Beth is shattered. She keeps asking me, "How did you and Dad do it? How did you stay in love for 37 years? What's the secret?" What do I tell her? That I married her father because the man I really loved was supposedly dead? That I built a good life with Gerald, a real life? But that somewhere deep inside me, there was always a part that belonged to someone else. And here's what Quinlan wants. He wants me to tell them, all of them. He thinks they deserve to know the truth. He thinks it will help them understand me better, help them see me as a whole person, not just their mother. He says we're old enough now that the truth can't hurt anyone, that Gerald is gone, Margot is in Oregon dealing with her own regrets, and we deserve to acknowledge what we had before we die. But I don't know if that's true, because Beth is already broken, and if she finds out that even my marriage, the one she thought was perfect, the one she's been holding up as proof that lasting love exists, was built on the ashes of something else, what will that do to her? Yesterday, Quinlan had a bad episode. He couldn't breathe. The nurse had to call me into his room at 2 in the morning. I held his hand while she adjusted his oxygen. And when he could finally speak, he looked at me and said, "We're running out of time, Thea. You need to decide." He wants me to tell my children this Sunday. We're supposed to have dinner together, all 3 of them, plus the grandkids. A normal family dinner. Except Quinlan thinks I should use that dinner to tell them about him, about us, about the life I almost had. Part of me wants to. God, part of me desperately wants to finally say it out loud. I loved someone before your father. I loved him with everything I was. And when I thought he died, something in me died too. Your father saved me. He gave me a good life. I loved him. But Quinlan was my first love, my great love, and I never forgot him. But another part of me thinks, what right do I have to unburden myself at their expense? Gerald was their father. He loved them unconditionally. He was there for every moment of their lives. Why should they have to question that now? Why should they have to carry the weight of my choices, my losses, my secrets? And there's something else, something I haven't told Quinlan yet. 2 weeks ago, I found something while cleaning out the attic, Gerald's journal. I didn't even know he kept one. But there it was, hidden in a box of his old tax documents. I read it. I know I shouldn't have, but I did. And on page after page, Gerald wrote about me, about how much he loved me, about how he knew I was sad when we first met, how he'd suspected I was grieving someone, how he'd decided that his life's mission would be to make me happy enough to forget whoever I'd lost. He wrote about our wedding day. She said yes to me, but I wonder if she's still saying goodbye to someone else. He wrote about the birth of Michael. When she held our son for the first time, she cried. I hope those were tears of joy. But part of me wonders if she was crying for the children she won't have with whoever came before me. And then, dated April 1997, our 16th anniversary, he wrote, I know I'm not her first love. I've always known. But I'm determined to be her last. I'm determined to love her so well that whoever came before doesn't matter anymore. Reading those words broke something in me. Gerald knew. He'd always known. And he'd loved me anyway. He'd spent our entire marriage trying to heal a wound he didn't cause, trying to compete with a ghost. And he succeeded. He really did. Because by the time he died, I'd built a life with him that was real and full and precious. Quinlan had become a memory. A tender, painful memory, but a memory nonetheless. So if I tell my children about Quinlan now, am I honoring the truth? Or am I disrespecting Gerald's memory? Am I undoing all the work he did to make me whole again? I don't know. I'm 67 years old, and I still don't know. Quinlan is dying. In a few days, maybe a week, he'll be gone. And I'll have to live with whatever choice I make. My children will have to live with it too. So I'm asking you, and I'm asking your listeners, what would you do? If you were me, would you tell the truth? Would you let your children know that their mother had a great love before their father, that she grieved, and she built a good life anyway, but that there was always a shadow in it? Or would you stay silent? Would you protect Gerald's memory? Would you let your children believe their parents' love story was simple and whole and uncomplicated? And if you were my children, if you found out your mother had kept this secret for more than 40 years, how would you feel? Would you want to know? Would it change how you see her? How you see your father? I need help because the clock is ticking, and whatever I decide, I'll have to live with it for the rest of my life. With love and uncertainty, send an email. Leave a comment. Share your own stories of lost loves and buried truths. Because this isn't just Thea's dilemma. This is all of our dilemmas. This is what it means to live a long life, to have layers, to be more complicated than our children can ever know. And to everyone listening who has their own Quinlan, their own secret first love, their own ghost they've carried for decades, you're not alone. Your story matters. Send it to us. Let it breathe. Because here's what I believe. Life doesn't get simpler as we age. It gets more layered, more complicated, more beautiful and heartbreaking all at once. And that's what second chapters are really about. Not starting over, but learning to live with all our chapters at once. The ones we lived, the ones we didn't, the ones we wish we could rewrite. I'm your host, and this is Second Chapters. Take care of each other out there, and take care of yourselves. We'll be back next week with your responses to Thea's story. Until then, keep those letters coming.